I had become chief of a division, so I had a number of lawyers that I was supervising. I had interesting cases I was working on. I was pregnant with my second child, and actually, my husband, I'm originally from Detroit, and my husband had a contract in Detroit for 1 year. And since I was going to be on maternity leave anyway, I decided to take a leave of absence from the Chicago office and go to the U.S. Attorney's office in Detroit. I'd have maternity leave for 4 or 5 months, work a few months, we'd come back. So the weekend we moved, I got a call from the U.S. Attorney's office that Senator Chuck Percy, who was the senator at the time, was interested in me as a potential candidate for the U.S. District Court. And I was very surprised because there were very few Black women federal judges at that time, very few. And the first had been Constance Baker Motley, who was a tremendous role model. She was appointed in 1966. And it had never crossed my mind. But of course, if Senator Percy's office was asking, I was very interested, even though I knew that I was a long shot. I didn't know what the odds were. And so once I got that call, I began to have discussions with Senator Percy's office. I filled out a lot of paperwork. I had to have an FBI check, just like I had for the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the FBI agents go to all your neighbors, everywhere you've lived since I was like 18, and interviewed them to find out whether I was a person of good character, whether I had wild parties at my house. All kinds of things were asked of people that I knew, people I went to school with. So I was cleared by the FBI. I filled out all the forms. I had to be interviewed by a number of bar associations, groups of lawyers, to determine whether I was competent. They made recommendations on whether I was qualified or not. And then Senator Percy made the decision to forward my name to the president. And then I had to be interviewed by the White House. The American Bar Association, which is the National Bar Association of Lawyers, had to review all my paperwork and to screen me and to give me a rating. And I did well there. And so I was recommended to the president, and the president nominated me. So that's the process. That's the process that I follow. And in terms of being a judge, now or after I was on the bench, I realized that I had done a lot of things to prepare for the bench, but not knowingly, not because I planned it. But nowadays, there's also a certain amount of luck and fate and a certain amount of God in every appointment, if you believe in God or some higher being, because there are not many of these positions in the country. There are right now about 1,300 federal judges in the whole country. About 4 or 5, maybe 400 of those judges are senior judges, judges who are over the age of 65, who've been on the court for 15 years. There are about 650 United States district judges that are active judges in the country, and about 180 to 200 Court of Appeals judges. That's not a lot out of the thousands and thousands of lawyers. So anybody that gets this position is very fortunate, very fortunate. So that's what I mean when I say it was difficult. But for me, it turned out that I had done certain things in my career that were very helpful. I had worked very hard all my career. I had tried to do my very best, which is something my parents said. Fortunately, that hard work paid off. So I said I'd been in the building my whole life. So, of course, the judges in that building were among the people that when the senator was asking, or the bar associations were saying, would she make a good judge? Is she smart enough? Can she do the work? Will she be a hard worker? There were people who had seen my performance and said yes. So that was one way I prepared. The other way was I've done a lot of teaching. Teaching is a love of mine. I started out as a teacher, and so I did a lot of teaching of law students in advocacy, trial advocacy, how to try cases, because I had tried a lot of cases. I was involved with the National Institute for Trial Advocacy, which is the premier trial program. I had taught all over the country, and I had served on different committees in the court, so people had gotten to know me. And so there were a lot of people who could stand up for me and who could help me. And that's what I meant about the people who helped me out. Because, of course, there were no Black women on the bench. In fact, when I started in the U.S. Attorney's Office, there were no women, period. So the people who helped me, who were in positions of power, were a lot of men. I was fortunate because my first supervisor in the office was a woman, Alana Rovner, and there were more women in the office. And in fact, Alana Rovner became a district court judge about a year before I did. And then she went on the Court of Appeals in 1992. She was the first woman on the Court of Appeals. I was the first Black on our Court of Appeals. Our Court of Appeals handles a 3-state region, Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. So she was a mentor of mine. And I mentioned Mary Ann Jackson, who's now a state court judge. And there were other women in the office who helped me. But a lot of the people in the rooms where decisions were made about whether I should be promoted or not were men. And a lot of people reached out to me and helped me in my career. So one of the things you can think about is, teachers, getting the respect of teachers and trying to get the best grades that you can get. So that when it's time for you to go to high school, if it's a high school you have to apply to, there's some teachers from your middle school that know what kind of work you do. It's really important to get involved in some of the activities at school. I mentioned that I liked the school newspaper. I was also a service girl. I wanted to be a service boy, a safety boy that stood on the corner with the little orange badge to help direct the kids to cross the street. But of course, when I was growing up, girls couldn't be safety girls on the corner. We could only work in the hall and do hall traffic, but I couldn't be on the corner. So I was, monitoring in the halls, and I was in the Glee Club, and I was in a lot of activities. And people look at that when you're on your way to high school. They look at, have you been involved in your community, and have you done any kind of work? And then when I was in high school, I tutored elementary kids. So, and then there are certain classes you can take in school, like speech class. You need to be a strong writer to be a lawyer, because a lot of what we do is writing. A lot of what I did was a lawyer. When I was writing, when I was a lawyer, I wasn't in court every day. I was in court a lot. I tried maybe 3 or 4 cases a year as a federal prosecutor, but a lot of people pled guilty. So you have to be a very strong writer. You have to, I think, be articulate. You have to be able to speak well, take a speech class, because at some point, even if you don't want to be in a courtroom, you have to talk to people about your case. You have to persuade people to settle a case. So classes like that are important.